Hi, good morning. It is fantastic to be here in Riga. Is it working? Yes, and I'm extremely proud to have this very beautiful Latvian edition of Soft City to share with you. I have to point in the right direction. So, step outside, come outside, like the George Michael song. And some say, well, why? Because if it's not nice outside, why should you come outside? My biggest hero, is this going to be? Yes, Jan Gehl, the Robin Hood of architecture. He was the guy who found this subject really important. He kind of asked this question, he talked about life between buildings. And actually, it's a love story, like all the best things we've already heard this morning. You might meet your love today. Jan Gehl, who's an architect from Denmark, he fell in love with an environmental psychologist, Ingrid. And together, they became fascinated by everything that was happening in the public realm between the buildings. And I guess, it's kind of like, Jan Gehl was the architect, and he was kind of mansplaining maybe a little bit the rationale of modernism. And Ingrid was a psychologist, and she said, no, there's science here. You have to understand how human beings work. And together, Jan and Ingrid Gehl created a new subject. They fused architecture and environmental psychology, and they asked the questions about what cities do. What does the city do to make it nice for people? Because in the 60s, early 70s, nobody was really talking about what makes a nice city for people. And they went to Italy, and here we are in Venice, and this is when it's great to be a human being. An 11-year-old boy kicking a football against the back of the church. It's a very exciting football game because you cannot predict where the ball is going to bounce. It's also very exciting if you're a pedestrian. There are multiple games going on because the 7- and 8-year-old boys are not allowed to play football with the 11-, 12-year-old boys. But what's really great for the parents, in the same space you see the cafe in the background, and in the same space, the mom and the dad can have a glass of Prosecco or an Aperol or a cappuccino and have an adult conversation. And this is the alchemy of public space, where different people can enjoy themselves at the same time in the same space. And I guess that's kind of like the dream of Italy. Jan Gehl and Ingrid Gehl thought this was very interesting. And they studied all of the aspects of it. They spent a year studying the spaces. This isn't changing. Yes, they studied the spaces. And you can see the study they've made, learning why is it so nice to be in Italian square? Why do people behave? What makes it comfortable to be in this space? And of course, Jan Gehl came back to Denmark, and this is from the newspaper. It was so ridiculous. How could Italy possibly be relevant for Denmark? We're not Latinos. We've got terrible weather. It was just, what a joke. And so this was in the newspaper because it was just so ridiculous. Because, of course, what mattered in Denmark was maybe where you parked your car. And this is really slowly. Yes, where you parked your car. That was what was important. But now, if you go to Copenhagen, what do you see? You see people hanging out in public spaces, just like Italians, sitting underneath the umbrellas, having wine, having cappuccino. This was a joke in the 1970s. And now, that's all we do, is hang out in public spaces. And even the joke about the gondolas in Copenhagen, because that was so ridiculous. Well, actually, you go to Copenhagen now, and you see people using the water. So, we can change. There's an Icelandic saying, man's greatest joy is humanity, and why we enjoy being out in public spaces. And maybe this is this is Jan Ingrid Gehl, 89 years old, still going strong, so public space is good for you. And maybe also to remember that 1971, that was 54 years ago, they wrote this book, Life Between Buildings. I can tell you that in 1971, I was already active in urbanism. Now, in the 1970s, we were very experimental in architecture. This was a Danish prefabricated building system. I'm actually very proud. You already see here, this is a building site, but the public transport is already operational, and there's no parking on the street, only off-street parking. Growing up in Scotland with this kind of wall-to-wall carpet, my mum was going crazy, like, when will this city you're making ever be finished? And I said the smartest thing I've ever said. Because if you stand on a piece of Lego, it's quite sore. I said, Mum, it's a city. It will never be finished. And our city's work is never done. And I guess I was inspired not only by the Lego bricks, but also this very important literature, when these children's books, these picture books, which were filled with life between buildings. And I guess that was maybe a little bit the inspiration for the graphic for the Soft City book, which has a little, and my publisher was really nervous because he thought, this book about architecture in the city, it looks like a children's book. But that was the idea, to talk about all of the possibilities. And maybe our job in the profession, working with the city, is to demystify all these things about the city, things that make the city attractive and enjoyable and to come outside. But what about this soft thing? And I can only describe it like the soft, like a modern, when I was a kid, the teddy bears were hard, these German teddy bears. They could sort of stand and you could adjust them. But today, the teddy bears are like soft, they're like kind of a cushion. And that means there's room for the hug. The bear makes sense when you hug it. And we need to think about our designs in this way, that the chair only makes sense when you sit on it. Oh, so back. So here in the French Park, these movable chairs. This is soft. But the real core of soft is the sensory part. Smell the bread, smell the coffee, touch the fruit. When you're cycling, feel the breeze on your face as you cycle. Hear the fountain, the water in the fountain. Biophilia, huge subject, I'm sure you know already. The sound of running water is deep in our reptile brain. Running water means survival. And of course, the sociable city is just a bench, but it allows us to hang out together, to spend time together. Sociable, so sensory and sociable. And that's what the soft city is about. An invitation to walk. Is it easy to walk? This is a pedestrian crossing in Pontevedra in Spain. And see how wide it is. It's just paint. But this generous crossing invites you to cross the street just by saying, you are important. It's only paint. This is the metro map in this small Galician town north of Spain. You think, this town is so small, does it have a metro? But look closely, it's the pedestrian metro. And instead of giving just the meters, it tells you the walking time. How long does it take to walk between the different spaces? That's a 3-minute walk. There's a 2-minute walk, a 5-minute walk. It takes me 4 minutes to get my car out of the garage. But thinking in minutes is a way to make it easy to walk around outside. My favorite project, you're thinking, what is this? This is the Copenhagen time machine. In Copenhagen, on the side streets, the pavement, the sidewalk continues across the side street, which gives you the right to keep walking. You don't have to stop for the cars. It means your 6-minute walk to the bakery maybe becomes a 3-minute walk because the cars have to stop. It means your kids can walk to school 12 blocks and they never cross the street because they always have the priority. It's a really simple system. It's just the pavement continuing. The guy from the countryside who's never seen this before, even the taxi driver, understands how it works. Make it easy to walk. A simple step in making it easier to come outside. Yeah, you get the idea. Hanging out together. Okay, this was the most boring picture of public life I could find. Swiss people playing chess. But for these lonely old men, gives them a legitimate excuse to hang out in the public space. They're watching the chess. And maybe even a legitimate excuse to make a comment, to talk. Oh, bad move. But in this public space, 2 people playing, 20 hanging out together. Loneliness is the number 2, together with depression, is the number 2 kind of disease we're fighting. Just an opportunity to hang out. A little wall to sit on. The invitation to sit, to stop. Same culture across cultures, whether you're in Switzerland or in Japan. It's the same kind of quality to be able to sit down in a public space and meet a meet a friend. Maybe have a coffee, even better. Sit down with a coffee or a Prosecco. Coffees and sun, even better in Helsinki. Maybe with ice cream. And it's just such simple things make being out in the public space nice. And then we can maybe think about climatic comfort. We don't have the Italian weather always. How can we spend more time outdoors? We can maybe make some kind of intervention, like having a blanket in Copenhagen, spend out a bit longer. Here in my hometown of Lund in Sweden, there's this sunny wall of the church, and even in winter it gets warm. It heats up during the day and it's like leaning on a radiator. It's just a bench. It's just a bit of sunshine, but it means you can spend time outdoors in the winter. And in this way, we can actually make our own weather. And just like that magical pavement in Copenhagen, this is my magical box here in Malmö. Now, can we go back? This is performing on its own now, okay? This is outside of the box. The wind is blowing, it feels like Siberia. But inside this box, it's Lake Como. It's just a wall. But this wall protects you from the wind and makes a microclimate which allows you to spend time outdoors, undo your jacket, and enjoy the sunshine. It's as simple as that. And if we scale up this idea of the protective wall, which allows us to spend time outdoors, here we are in the medieval center of Lund in Sweden, and you can see they put this kind of like south of France Riviera benches to lie down on. But even when there's snow on the ground, you can still be outside. Our medieval forefathers knew how to build microclimate, protect us from the wind, and capture the sun. It's as simple as that. And we're catching up. Oh, sorry. So, climate, we know where the sun shines. Here we are in Vestervolga in Copenhagen. After 400 years of Copenhagen, they know where the sun shines. In the afternoon, on the sunny side of the street. So what they've done is they've made a wider pavement, a wider sidewalk on the sunny side of the street. The cars can be in the shade, you can park the cars in the shade, and you give the sunny side of the street to people. So the street doesn't need to be symmetrical. And then you can furnish this broad, sunny pavement with all the kinds of useful furniture for the cafe. This is outside the high school. There are, things to, equipment to play with. So you can actually do fun things. Again, understanding where does the sun shine in our city and make the most of that. Yeah, okay, sorry, okay, thank you. Another really simple one is the courtyard. This protected space inside where, you're protected from the wind, may capture the sun. And if we open up and make the big space inside, you have the best backyard that you can imagine. And often we hear a reason, like the reason why people maybe move to the suburbs from the city is because they have a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid, and the kid needs grass. And suddenly you have to make this big decision, to borrow money from your parents-in-law, buy a house in the suburb and spend an hour, 2 hours every day going back and forward to the suburbs because your kid needs grass. But imagine if we could do this in the middle of the city. You could stay in the city and have the best playground imaginable, and you run down the stairs in 45 seconds. The kids can be playing outside. Mom and dad can be watching, making the dinner, watching from the window, but there are also all the other parents watching. There are also other friends to play with. And this suddenly makes life in the city really good for families. And this is probably the main reason why Copenhagen became so livable for families, just because they made the back courtyards green. Spending time outdoors, leave your bike outside, the children can leave their toys outside. So simple, it's just a courtyard. And then you can learn to ride your bike. And of course, that's very useful, learning to ride your bike in the safe courtyard. But wouldn't it be so much better if you could ride your bike out in the city? And again, if we design really super safe, simple bike lanes, just with kind of like this very clear pedestrians, curb, bikes, curb, cars, then we can really accommodate all of that movement. And what's great when you go to Copenhagen, everybody cycles. Granny grandpa, 8-year-old girl, the scary, cool guy with sunglasses. Everybody cycles because it's easy. It's super, super easy. And when you're on your bike, you're at eye level, you're in the same airspace, the same sound space as the pedestrians. So you're very much part of the city. So all of that sensory, sociable stuff I talked about at the beginning still makes sense. And, you can feel the breeze, the trees. And we have this phenomenon, we call it conversational cycling. And just designing the bike lane so that it's wide enough that you can cycle with your friend or your kid on the way to school, having a nice time because it's nice to talk to somebody as you cycle. The guy in Lycra can zoom past. And fun fact, children in Denmark who walk and cycle to school have better academic performances than children that are driven to school. And this is a huge crisis for the middle class because if you want your kid to be a doctor, make sure he walks or cycles to school. And of course, on your bike, it's nice, sociable. You have these little surprises, these little encounters. You see funny things. You can stop spontaneously when you see your friend. And this is the nice thing. Smell that Danish pastry. You can stop. And in like 15 seconds, you could be inside the shop. And of course, this suddenly means that not only are you having a nice experience, but you're supporting the local shops, local businesses. Everywhere we've studied it, cyclists spend more than people in cars because they're going slow enough, they're in the same sensory space, they can smell the coffee, they can stop spontaneously. You can cycle in the summer, and you can cycle in the winter. And if we think about this thing, living with the weather, that's our biggest challenge in the Nordics, living with the weather. But in the north, we've learned to do that. Who would imagine me swimming, in the harbor in Copenhagen, like hanging out and you're meeting your neighbor in their swimming costume, kind of like, it's like being on holiday, in the city. And and this was maybe the best example I know. This isn't against Switzerland. I said Switzerland was boring. I guess there's no Swiss people here, but this is in Bern, the Swiss capital, and here are the politicians, the watchmakers, the bankers, walking around the city in their swimming costumes. And why are they doing that? Well, it's so hot. Switzerland's now getting these Mediterranean temperatures, and they're jumping in the river to cool down because it's the one free thing you can do. And they've made this possible by making a very, very simple system. They understood, can you swim? Do you have a swimming costume? If you know how to do that, you can jump in the river. And is it coming? And so here's the app. It's super in the water. But by swimming in the river, you can kind of like understand, like, hey, how can we swim? It's only May. Yeah, it's climate change. How can the water be so cold in August? Yeah, actually, it's the glacier melting. So suddenly, this fun activity connects you to maybe the bigger, very relevant climate questions, but it becomes relevant for you in your everyday life. And it's simple. They built some concrete steps with a bright red handle, and this simple system allowed people to access their river. And I'm trying to go as fast as I can. So it's simple, concrete steps, red handle, simple way to get in and out of the water. And suddenly, the river in the city becomes like a playground. Yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, so here we are in Malmö. It's the end, Malmö. It's possible here. It was never intended, people never imagined that they would swim in Malmö. But this soft feeling of walking around your neighborhood in your dressing gown, like you were in a spa or something. How nice is that? And I suppose the whole thing is coming together as this idea that is a holiday feeling. Imagine on a Tuesday night, you can take your husband and your wife on a date. You can have a pizza, and you can see the tray on the end. They've got it's Tuesday, it's no Coca-Cola on a Tuesday. They've got the water from the apartment, the tray from the apartment. And what it means for an ordinary family to have this mini vacation, a little holiday on a Tuesday night. and what that does for the family dynamic, the relationship, just having this time to kind of, that you can have this little mini vacation in the middle of your normal everyday life. And it's more than just urban design. If we look at this, this is a picture of health, of democracy, of people hanging. You see different kinds of people hanging out in the public space. It's a picture of health. You can ask a district nurse or a surgeon, what's the foundation of health? They'll say the same thing. Fresh air, exercise, meet people. Be in the public space together with others. And we start solving some really big society questions. And I'm just in my last little set, my last runoff here. So who would imagine that these Swedes would be dancing tango in the public space? Because if you make it nice enough, if you invite people, if you offer a view, some sunshine, and some opportunity to sit down, you can actually have this kind of life in the public space. And I think, we're almost there. And come outside. So very quickly, I don't know how quickly we can do this. Can we just go through this? This is just images from Riga, these little moments of optimism and hope that we see, and just ask yourselves, what is it that makes us want to come outside? What makes us want to sit down? What makes us want to spend time in the public space? To enjoy being a human being, sometimes. To enjoy being a human being. To enjoy being together with other human beings. And to be aware what factors influence you. So, and I think, on the whole, you can start to recognize the pattern. The courtyards, the pavements, the crossings, the bike lanes, all of those little things which invite us to come outside and enjoy being in public spaces. And I guess this is the outside, the concert hall with fantastic new public spaces. All of those things which make it extremely enjoyable to be in the public space. Thank you very much.